So we're talking about how to retain top talent. And so I'll ask you guys a question. Turnover, is turnover good or bad?
Depends.
That's exactly right. It depends. So what's a good turn? What's a good turnover?
A bad person, bad hire.
Yeah, so somebody that's stressing you out, somebody's not doing their job, and then they resign, and you're going, whew, that's awesome, right? Because I was anxious or stressed that I was going to have to fire them, and now I don't have to fire them, right? And so that's a good turn. What else might be a good turn? Somebody who's moved on from your organization, and you think about it and you feel good about it.
I think somebody who's overqualified for the position and they bring ideas or, for the short time that they were there, they gave you new ideas and, you develop some, now you've got some developing some different habits.
Sometimes if someone comes, you get the sense that they're very qualified, maybe they're ambitious, and you know that you're not going to be able to satisfy either their ambition, their drive for long, right?
They left you better off than...
Yeah. They came, they worked hard, they did a good job, they've given notice in the right way, and boom, now you're able to kind of pat them on the back and thank them, throw them a party for the contributions they've made thus far. So when you know that they've done well and moved on and handled it right, when you know that they were a bad employee, either way, when you say, okay, there's really no options, right? But there's the turnover that is bad is where you feel like there's something you could have done, right? And I'm going to tell you that it's been my experience that most turnover of good people is preventable. If we were to label 100 times people that left that were good employees and you're unhappy that they're leaving, most of the reason why they're leaving is something that's preventable. And I've kind of given you the list already, but why do good people leave? So if you ever left, you were an employee once upon a time, weren't you, Tom? You weren't always an owner. So do you remember a time or two when you left? What was your motivation? What were you thinking about when you left?
Moving up.
Moving up. Yeah. Now, Rob, you worked for the state almost your whole life, right? But you moved from department to department.
And some of those were some of the very reasons we've talked about in here. Someone said either the goals weren't clear or the incentives weren't clear initially, and so I was disgruntled, or the incentives were laid out and not followed through.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think those are two big reasons, and those two affected much of my career, I guess.
Absolutely. So we want to move up. So good people want to make more money. Good people want to learn more, right? They want to grow professionally. They want new challenges. And sometimes we get into this mindset that the only way to do that is you got to be a big corporation. And that's not true. I mean, big corporations, if it's handled well, can provide that. But small companies can do it to some extent also. But good people leave for a number of reasons. Probably the most common reason. What's the most common reason good people leave? And I would say is because they have a bad boss, right?
I was going to say, you might think it's money, but probably not, because they wouldn't have taken the position in the first place if money were an issue.
Yeah. When you study quality of work life and kind of attitudinal studies as to why what employees want, kind of engagement studies, money is almost like 7th in the list, 5th in terms of what's important to them. In my corporate experience, we were educated and kind of taught that we want to be competitive, and competitive meant within 20%. So as long as you were, within 20%, if your culture, your benefits, the opportunity was there, good people would take that job and would stay, right? I had an experience that was very interesting in West Michigan. The office was in a small town, 45 minutes from Grand Rapids, and people would leave our team for 50 cents more an hour, but a number of them would come back because they realized that they could make more money somewhere else, but they didn't have as much fun, they didn't enjoy the team. You know, there's just a lot of things we were able to offer that other companies couldn't. So, you know, when we talk about why they leave, one of the most preventable things that we can do is make sure that the people in place that we have are good leaders. And when I say good, I'm talking character first. Too many times we employ, I don't know, should I say a-holes on a video or whatever? I'm not, you know, say the whole word, but you know what I mean? We have really difficult people that know how to treat people. They're unkind, they're discourteous, they're downright mean, rude. You know, they think it's all about them. So it's really character, right? You know, it's really character. And many times when people get into leadership, it really becomes more about them. So it's like, do this for me, do that. You know, well, why are you acting that way? And the answer is, because I can. Owners struggle with that disease a lot sometimes, where, why do you treat people that much? Why do you yell and scream? Why do you use that language? Why, you know, do you think they approve? No. Well, why do you do it then? Because I can.
My company.
Yeah. And then they wonder, I don't know, why are people leaving? Yeah. Just in the last couple months, I interviewed a lady for a job, for a client, and very, you know, smart, good background, and she said she interviewed for this financial company, it was like a large stock brokerage firm or something like that, and the offer that they made on day one when she got there, they said, oh, by the way, that's not going to be your job, we're going to change your job description, put you in a different role. I mean, you can't do that to people. Hire them for one job and then move them into another job, right? Well, and then there was a team of 3 or 4 additional people. All those folks left. I mean, it was just a nightmare. But as we go through this list, the poor managers thing is huge. The number one reason, and you've heard it said, people don't quit their jobs, they quit their boss, right? So we do need to be thinking, is this person skilled? So, you know, you've got a gentleman, you know, Bill, right? Is he kind of running the business when you're not there? Yeah, so Bill's right. So you got to ask yourself, and he seems nice enough to me, but is this person, does he know how to treat people? You know, does he live by the golden rule, right? You don't have to be religious to understand the value in the golden rule and how you treat others, right? It's how you want to be treated. You know, the secondary question is, can he lead, make good decisions, have good interpersonal skills, all that kind of stuff. But you really have to ask yourself, does this person have the character to lead my people? Is he a good representative of my moral values and how I want my staff to be treated? And if they don't, many times we're tempted to go ahead and make the hire because they've got the credentials, they got the background, and you know, we end up losing good people. And good people are so hard. And I qualify, good people are really hard to replace. A quick story. So when I was in, I'm just going to sit down here because it's just, when I was in, I think I was in Florida as a general manager. By now, Auto Trader Magazine is where I cut my teeth in business.
Where?
So I did a startup with them in Kansas City. I was asked to Auto Trader Magazine back in their infancy. I mean, literally when I started, they were doing $30 million a year, had 15 offices. And when I left in 1985, I was a general manager kind of over an operation in a given city. But they had 85 properties doing $300 million in 7 years. But the reason I'm telling the story is I think it really drives the point home what you have to believe in order to have a good operation. Trader really had a great culture. They really understood the value of culture and how you treat your people. My boss was an amazing mentor and, you know, taught me, you know, respect and, you know, leading by example as well as being a good business person. But it went through the grapevine that the manager in Atlanta was in some trouble. And this is very unusual because if you looked at a list of 80, they would send out a posting saying, here's 85 offices. So they would post the revenue and the gross margin. All general managers knew each other's revenue and gross margin. So they were a top 5 office. They were doing like $6-7 million a year at 30-35% gross margin. Incredibly profitable operation in Atlanta. But we found out that this manager was being verbally abusive to his employees. And so not long after that, we heard he's gone. He's terminated. And so, what's going on? We learned that, they came in as manager and said, hey, that's how we treat people. He was yelling and screaming at people, in the halls, using profanity and being kind of, just being disrespectful to his employees. And so his boss sat him down and said, that's not who we are. That's not the way we're going to treat our people. And, how do you argue with my results? And I'm getting results. That's kind of who I am and all that. And I said, listen, it's not going to happen. That's not how you're going to treat your people. We appreciate your results, but that's not aligning with our values. Your behavior is not aligning with our values. Within 2-3 weeks, he was gone. And think about the statement that makes when a high-performing manager, whose numbers are some of the best in the company, gets terminated because they break a core value. They violate a core value. When you do that, what kind of message does that send to all the other managers within the company, right? Because if you want to be horses behind to your people, doesn't matter how profitable you are, how effective you are as a leader, right? You're gonna be gone. And that was powerful. And there's 100 lessons like that happened along the way. I was with them about 7 years. But you realize that how you treat others and how you behave is important. And those intangibles, it starts at the top, right? So when we go through this list, poor managers, we need to exit poor managers quickly. We want to give them an opportunity to learn and grow like we would any employee. But when it's like, when it's not leader behavior, like decision making, when it's qualitative things like their attitude, their disrespect, that's the stuff you got to address quickly and with a degree of finality. And I'll tell you what's interesting. Tom, and I can't mention the name because this is going to be recorded, but there's a large company here in Louisville, and for the most part, their first level supervisors are pretty good folks, pretty smart, pretty good leaders. Their managers are pretty good leaders. Their directors are pretty good leaders. But once you get above that level and you get to the officer suite, the C-suite, yelling, screaming, cussing, disrespect to each other, disrespect to their subordinates. It's almost like power, right? And again, why do you behave that way? And it's like, well, because I can. And so that's the dangerous thing. When somebody kind of has that attitude, like, because I can. Because I have the power, I have the influence. I'm so secure, seemingly, at least I may be deceived, And if an owner does that, shame on them because they can do that. They just either going to have some consequences they're not going to like. But if it's an employee and somebody's allowing that, because we've all heard you get the behavior you permit, you allow. And if we allow that to happen, it's going to continue. So very important to just make sure we put a stake in the ground and say, that's not going to happen. Number 3 here is no training, learning, or growth opportunities. With Trader, I started in Kansas City, and I was there 3 years as a startup, and my boss says, hey, will you go to Michigan and manage one of my properties under my authority there that was struggling? So that was cool. So I had a bigger staff, a bigger budget, and then it was cold, and we bought a competitor in Florida, and I posted on that job and got it. So, I enjoyed kind of the benefit of a big company where I could move 3 times in 7 years. But there's still ways as a small company to give people projects, right? They're doing one thing, they kind of have a job description, but if you identify somebody who's a high performer or a potential high performer and say, hey, there's some initiatives here on my list that I want to drive forward, will you take on this project for me? I'll meet with you, I'll coach you, I'll mentor you through it, but this will be some additional knowledge you'll gain, this is going to drive the business forward, and so that person appreciates, right, being asked to do it. That person appreciates the new knowledge that they've gained, and the business gets to move forward because you've asked somebody additionally to do something that's needed for the benefit of the business. So, training and learning opportunities for high performers are critical. We do the DISC, right? The low DI, high SC person. A lot of those folks, they just want to show up. They just want to do their job. They're solid staff performers, and they may not fit this. But as that D creeps up a little bit, right, and they're a little bit more dominant, and they have some drive, they have that initiative, and it's not character, it's just that's how they're wired. They're wired for challenge. They're wired to be ambitious and to learn more. We've got to satisfy that need, or they're going to move on. some of the new thinking is very interesting. The millennials, we're learning that the millennials tend not to stay. You know, back in our day and our parents, they would stay 10, 20, 30 years. We've all known people that worked someplace for many, many years. And so one of the knocks on the millennials is they're not loyal. You know, I'm not sure that's always true, but I think the mindset has definitely changed. But one of the things you could do with some of your younger employees is say, listen, you know, can I count on you, you know, to kind of at least a verbal commitment that you're going to be here for a year? So have a conversation with them that says, in the next year, you know, what can we do to give you the best opportunity where you're learning and having fun and I'm getting the most benefit I can? And so it's kind of like a contract, if you would. Even though they're an employee, you're kind of treating them as a short-term contract and kind of approaching it with, you know, they're probably not going to be here very long, but I'm still going to try to optimize their contribution. So, you know, part of our mindset, Tom, of our era is we get mad when people quit. It's like, oh, I put so much into them, and I feel betrayed. I feel like that, you know, I've been loyal to them, and they've not been loyal to me. That mindset has to go away. It just has to go away. We've got to understand that a lot of skills can be moved from one job to another, from one company to another, and if an employee doesn't feel whatever it is they're wanting, their needs aren't being met, they have no compunction to move on. So we've got to give them a reason to stay as best we can, and we've got to enjoy them and have a mindset that releases them easily when they say it's time to go. You know, I still think exit interviews are great. This is, could I have done anything different? You know, what's your drive? And we continue to learn and grow so that we can do better with the employees that are still there. But training and learning and growth opportunities for your smartest, right, and for your most driven. What I've learned in recruiting, had an interview this week with a lady who is a high DI temperament. So. For people who listen on video or audio, you know, there's a DISC profile, high dominance, high people skill need. Those folks are always driven internally, right? They're internally motivated for new challenges, new goals. You don't have to motivate those people. They're motivated in and of themselves. But one thing that we learned about this lady is she's very smart. In school, she took all honors classes. So that kind of adds another thing. People that are smart. So from a technology standpoint, they have bandwidth, right? I call it intellectual bandwidth, right? People that have a lot of bandwidth get bored easy. So when you add a high DI where they're driven and they got a lot of bandwidth, they're curious. They have this natural thing to learn more. The idea of routine and getting comfortable is very unsettling to them. So part of our role is identifying the smart people and trying to make sure that they're challenged. So sometimes they're just bright and thirsty and hungry, right, to learn more. The fourth one here is no connection to mission, vision, and values. Generally speaking, most of our employees have a desire to be connected to something beyond their job. They want to feel like there's a purpose or reason that they're there. And it's funny, I've got a customer, I think you know, seems like you know, I know he knows Ray. Andrew Green with Javs. Do you know Andrew with Javs? They're the ones that do the court reporting, audio, video, everything syncs up. The reason I bring them up is when you sit with Andrew, sometimes you get a little bit of a chill almost when you get him talking about his company. You get on the Javs website and they sell cameras, they sell software that's proprietary, and what it does is in a courtroom, when the judge speaks, that camera comes on, the audio comes on. When the prosecutor speaks, the defense attorney speaks, whoever speaks, the camera comes on, and then when you do a digital playback, the software syncs it all up in order, right? So whoever's speaking, you see their face, and so instead of court reporters, right, taking a written down message or whatever, it's an audio video message. So their purpose is to really change the world by bringing kind of a form of justice and order to. So there's countries internationally that they'll get to a point and they're trying to decide. So we're establishing more of a court system, and we want to have law and order. And so now they're looking at how they're going to have a record of the court. And JABS is proud of the fact that they can make the world a better place by having these systems. So it's not about, even though they have wonderful technology, wonderful products, I mean, it's really high quality stuff, but really the reason why they do what they do is this higher purpose. That they really believe that the world is a better place because of what they do and how they do it. That's kind of cool, isn't it? Now, how do you do that, right, in our little neck of the woods? By talking about our vision, why we're here, right? And yes, it's honorable to provide jobs and to provide money that people can raise their children and send them to college and all that. But we need to have a vision. And when we have a vision for the future, 5 years, 10 years, where we want to go, and people can say, man, this is cool, I want to be a part of this, right? I want to be a part of this vision. Then, you know, they find motivation beyond just the debits and the credits or the answer to the phone and that sort of thing. And that's part of how we get people to stay, is they buy in. In the DISC assessment, the SC temperaments really want a boss and a job where they're connected to a mission, to a purpose. That's really, they're looking for something.
So it would be a good strategy even then for a company to, you know, not only have a mission statement, but have that as, you know, part of what inspires people and kind of utilize that.
Absolutely.
To move forward. So that's
Many companies, before they have, so if they bring the team together for a meeting, they'll have the mission statement or the value statement or the vision statement, and they'll read it, right? Either together, if somebody within the team will read it, and they bring it up often when they're making a decision. So they've got to say, do we do this? So it's kind of a good, better, best decision, right? You have a decision to make moving forward, and so a good leader will say, which of these would best support and align with our mission, vision, or values. And ultimately, if you model your values, right, your value statement, if you model as a leader and your employees see you make decisions that line up with your values, that can be very inspiring to staff. In the same way, if you have this pretty words is what I call them, right? You have these pretty words in a framed print in your office or in the lobby, these pretty words that say who we are, and you never talk about them, and you constantly violate them in your day-to-day decision making, people find that quite discouraging, right? And they're looking for an opportunity to be inspired. I mean, ultimately, everyone wants to feel connected to something purposeful and meaningful. Right? Even within state government, you probably left the boss because he or she wasn't modeling the kind of values that you believed were important and resonated with you. So you're seeking, right? Within Louisville, we have Humana, same kind of thing. I hear people will say that, what kind of place is it to work at Humana? And they'll say, it depends. Depends on your boss. So they'll have one department manager who's awesome and another that's a total jerk, right? And so they'll move within the system until they find a manager that they can respect, that's worthy of following. So this is a big one here. And think about proactively, we can cast a vision. Let me tell you where I want to go. And I'd like you to help me get there. And then you can talk individually. Here's your role. Here's how I see your role. Here's where it is now. But as you develop and grow, right, here's how I see how you can help the company get us to this level. And it's like, wow, I'm doing something more than just this task. I'm doing something that's got a longer term purpose.
So it's sort of, I guess what I hear you saying a little bit, you know, the older crowd, I mean, this resonates with me, but inspires maybe a millennial. I mean, so you almost have to have these things in place to give them something to think about, this younger crowd.
I think
to inspire them to want to study.
I think it's the higher level, you know. Well, I pay them okay, you know, I'm competitive, I have good benefits. It's kind of a transactional. You ever heard that term, like transactional? So they give me a good day's work, I can give them a good day's pay. So that's not bad. But if you want transformational, you want to build something special, Zappos, man, right? You want to be unique, where you become a industry leader, where people say, man, you want to come work here. It's not just benefit and pay. It's the whole cultural aspect, right? How the leader behaves, how they interact with the staff, and that's special. I'm just teasing. We'll have to edit that one out, won't we? Yeah. So I think that's the cool. When you think about, what's a cool place to work where people are respected and appreciated, smart people are hired. You look around the room, right? You look around the room and say, wow, these people are sharp. When they open their mouth and talk, they're sharp. I remember we went to, I was 29, 30 years old, and the company announced they were going to really do some training. So that's the first time in my life they were really going to do leadership management training. So they contracted with this guy out of Michigan who was semi-retired. And so part of the deal was, I'll do the training for you. And this guy was supposed to be like a guru, but you got to come to me. So in a 3-month period of time, we flew down to Hilton Head Island. It was just a dinky little airport. So this is like 55 leaders at the time. 55 leaders at the time. We go to a Holiday Inn. Ain't nothing special about a Holiday Inn, right? Everybody said, oh, I went to Hilton Head. Never saw the water. Never saw the beach. Literally, class for 8 hours a day, homework for 3 or 4 hours at night, Monday through Thursday. I think we left by noon on Friday. But we did a program on hiring for a solid week. We did a program on leadership for a solid week. So we went back for a month and then came back for another week. And then we went back for a month and then back. So in 60 days, we did 3 weeks of training. 1 week on hiring, 1 week on how to build a team, and another one on leadership, kind of what it looks like to be a leader. It was amazing. What I remember, though, is that class within, because we would get together once a year, within a year or two, you would see people just disappearing. And the people that they would bring in, it's like, oh, the quality of the leadership got better, because you look around and you say, and they knew what they wanted, and every year the quality of the leadership got better and better and better, and they began to know what they were looking for. Part of it was the DISC. He trained us in using the DISC, so he was looking for DI leaders, and we started recruiting to more of a profile. Part of it was, the whole cultural thing. We were weeding out bad fits, people that did not have respect for their staff and for people at the home office. Internally, people, you heard of terminations where people did not have the right values. And it wasn't a Christian organization, it was just a high values organization. It was cool. I mean, they lived it. They supported those values. So very important there. Number 5, no feedback. This is a big one. Not long ago, I was on the phone with a guy, and I'll ask him. One of my first questions when I'm on the phone with a candidate is, tell me why you're leaving. Because if they say, well, I just want to make more money, that's not, if that's the only reason they want to leave, they'll leave my client pretty quickly, right? They want to go work for my client for a year or two until they make more money. We're looking for something else, right? And so this guy said, I do okay, but my boss has been promising me for months that we would have my evaluation, and if my evaluation went well, I'd get a raise and kind of put on more of an incentive program. And I'm tired of chasing after him and reminding him that he said he'd do that. So number 1, I've not been told how I'm doing. I want to know, what do I need to do well? What am I doing well right now? I've never been told how I'm doing it. Good employees, a lot of folks don't care. What do I care, right? I mean, that's kind of that middle, the low end of, kind of your talent pool. But your best people, give me some feedback. Because I want to know what you want so I want to exceed your expectations, right? So this idea of feedback is huge, huge. Probably one of the things that breaks my heart the most that I hear over and over and over is, Michael, I need you to help me. I've been terminated. I was let go. And so you might say, well, tell me about kind of the process and, what did they terminate you for? They said I wasn't doing a good job. Well, how are your previous evaluations? They're perfect. They straight across the board, perfect. So they never gave you a warning, they never gave you any kind of a, in big companies call it an individual development plan, an IDP or something. No, never. No IDP, no warning, no verbal warning, no written warning. They just sat me down, let me go. To me, that's unconscionable. That is just absolutely the wrong, I mean, it's sinful. Yeah. And who knows if we had given that person an opportunity to learn and grow, right? Hey, you're not doing this well. If you don't do this well and fix it in the next 90 days or 6 months, I'm going to have to let you go. They may have addressed it. But leaders don't want to have those difficult conversations. It's just shocking to me. And this whole thing of no feedback, people want to know, and your best people want to know how to do it. And we don't like doing quarterly evaluations, it takes too much time. We don't like having uncomfortable conversations telling people what they need to do better. And yet that's exactly what they need.
What they want.
It's exactly what they want. It really is. There again, my boss, Bill Reed, was an awesome mentor. And we talked on the phone every day. We never lived in the same city ever. But, you know, I saw him. I mean, in 7 years, I probably saw him less than 20 times, right, in 7 years. But I felt very close to him. We'd have an evaluation once a year. And it would literally be a 2.5 hour conversation in his office, total focus. And you know, at the end, one of the important questions was, where do you want to go from here? And you know, if I had a goal in mind or a position, he said, well, let me tell you what you're going to have to learn in order to get to that position. Here's where you got these things, but these things you're going to have to develop more. It was, even though it was, you could call it criticism. You don't know how to do this yet. You're not good enough. It's all how you take it and how it's presented. But I knew where my improvement opportunities were. And I was okay with that. I mean, most people get the fact that there's certain things they know and certain things they need to learn to do better, right? And so a leader who cares and is professional is the guide. They're the mentor to help them understand. In behavior modification, we call it freezing. We want to freeze what they're doing well. Okay, here's what you're doing well. Don't change those things, right? Because if you don't give feedback to people, they may change what they're doing well and start doing it not so well. So keep doing these things. But in the things that you need to get better, let me give you some direction. Let me give you some additional information so that you can do these things better. If you're not qualified to do that, get somebody who can, right? And that's part of the reason why we do these trainings, is to provide some of that foundational information. But you've got to tell people. The whole Coach to the Goal, the whole Coaching Skills for Leaders program is all about providing the framework to managers so that they can follow kind of a step-by-step process to give constructive feedback, right, and positive feedback to employees on an as-needed basis, as well as have an attitude of mentoring. So feedback is critical. And I'm going to say in the list of most common reasons why people feel a disconnect with their company and their boss is because the boss doesn't take the time to tell them how to do it. And there's no way that cannot be taken as disrespect. They don't care enough to tell me.
I don't have a problem sharing good feedback or stroking somebody, but I have a real difficult time if I'm not really happy with your work. I have a really hard time confronting that.
I understand.
So
You're in the majority.
I mean, I've got 2 people in my office, one that I am giving feedback to. Hey, Bill, great job, I really appreciate you went above and beyond today. And then I got the other guy that's like, I just don't talk to him because he constantly ticks me off. And I have a difficult time, you know.
But that person needs you to tell them why you're unhappy. And it really, the conversations needs to be something like this. Hey, you and I need to have a conversation, give them a couple days notice about your performance. There's some things that you're doing okay, doing pretty well, but there's some things I'm not happy with. So Friday at 1, you and I are going to sit down and talk. Maybe Bill is aware, maybe the 3 of you could have a conversation, so you've got another person there.
Right.
And
That's-
if you need to write it out, fine, write it out and read it, but you need to just say, you're not doing this right, and this right, and we need to work on that and put a plan together with some clear expectations. And until you do that, so, and again, it's just such a small group, I don't want you to take this personally, but you know, it's really your responsibility. The fact that he's not doing it, I don't want to say it's your fault, but
Well,
until you let him know that,
He
right?
charges for this normally, so you're getting this for free. So.
No, I don't, you know, when I look in the mirror, I realize what the problem is. But it's easier just to blame him,
But,
you know?
yes, but stop that.
Right,
Don't do
Right.
that anymore.
right.
If I told you his name, you know he is, because he's been around in Louisville a long, long time. And he had a company, I can't tell you the company, because, so he asked me to work with his leaders, he had 15 leaders. And so I go in and I'm meeting with 15 managers. And so I asked him, I said, one of the first questions I asked a new client is, tell me the last time somebody was terminated here. And they all looked at each other with this kind of funny look, and they started laughing. It was like, you know, I felt like there was some inside joke here, because the owner wasn't there in this group. So I said, well, what's going on? What's so funny? He says, well, never. No one's ever been fired. And they looked over and they said, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, one of the managers that was there did something that ticked him off. And everybody knows that he's unhappy. Everybody knows that she did something. She's tried to reach out to him. He won't return her calls, won't return her emails, and she still has a job there all those years later. Is that not the most bizarre thing you ever heard? So she has to go through a channel of events who will go to him, but he won't terminate her. It's just wrong. I mean, we need to be transparent. You know, if we have any relationship problem, right? A child, parent, husband, wife, friend relationship. If there's any relationship issue, the only way to resolve that issue between two people is to talk about it. There is no other way. And the best way to have a conversation with somebody is face to face. You get the full force of the verbal, the non-verbal, and you can kind of get to it. And it's funny how we will avoid, and people avoid confrontation in all kinds of relationships.
It's rarely as bad as, you know, fear is false evidence appearing real. It's rarely as bad as, it's rarely as bad as the anticipation of the event is rarely as bad as the
Amen.
event.
Amen. So this is why we need to do the coaching skills for leaders. We need to get a room and set it up and have a modest fee so we can do this for people who come to this class, because that's exactly what that's about, is learning a model that you can practice. And you say, okay, if I just follow these steps and have these conversations and I get better at it, right, then I can feel comfortable having them and I can get rid of that anxiety. Because you're right, it's the anxiety, the stress, the fear keeps us from confronting, and 9 times out of 10, it's not that big a deal. It's like, oh, thanks, Tom, I appreciate you letting me know. I really want to do a good job here. I didn't know I was missing the mark on that. I'll work harder. And you're going, oh, crap, you know, I've been stressing about this for 2 years, you know?
And regarding that conversation too, you know, you said probably they're doing some good things, so, you know, if you lead off with, you know, I like this, their takeaway from that meeting is probably gonna be, well, you know, you like some things I'm doing, so, you know, I'm gonna just fix these couple of things and we're good to go, you know, where we've been stressing over that whole thing, and it's like.
I appreciate your honesty, though, because you're exactly right. This,
But
what you
it's
just
the 1 out
expressed.
of 10 though that keeps me from,
Yeah.
from,
But you know, still worth it, still worth it. Part of it is you feel better about yourself because you're growing, you're taking on
Right.
things, you're kind of pushing the envelope on your own professional
Right.
development. And that principle, probably, I don't know you super well, you know, you and I have known each other a long time, but probably there's some fear of confrontation in other
oh,
relationships as well.
absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah.
So you
Because of 1
learn.
out of 10.
And if we could continue to focus on him.
Yeah, leave you alone, huh? Yeah. Well, it's very human. And I've been doing this a long time, and I'm gonna say 2/3 of the people in leadership or ownership to 3/4. So 60 to 75% of the people would say, yep, Tom, I know where you're coming from, I struggle with the same thing. I think part of the thing is the DI, right? You're not a DI, right? And so part of it's your wiring. So you're engaging in adaptive behavior. You're more a data guy, a detail guy, a structure guy as a professional accountant. And so those people challenges, those difficult people things are not natural things. If you're wired with a DI, it's much more like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll push through. I'll know. I mean, part of it is I'm just good with, I'm comfortable whatever happens, happens. Because I trust that I'm not going to yell and scream. I haven't always been that way, but I trust at this point in my professional career, I'm not going to yell and scream or lose my cool. And so I'll deal with it to the best of my ability. And it is just a conversation. Sometimes it's like, it's this final thing. Let's have a conversation. We gain some new knowledge, right? Go back to Covey. We're seeking first to understand and then to be understood. So it's like, wow, now I know this person better. I know why there's an issue now. So maybe we can address this, maybe we can't. We have some new knowledge and we work to the win-win, right? And so those things are very valuable. We keep that in mind with all of our
I
employee
always
issues.
thought that guy was a jerk, but now I know.
That could happen. That could happen. Probably most of the time, it's not that.
But everybody complains about this guy.
When I was in Florida, I had a manager there, pretty talented guy, been in sales for a long time, was one of the top salespeople, and before I got there, he was newly promoted into sales management. I was cool with that, we did the disc and it fit, but he came to me one day and he said, I gotta leave early today. I was like, well, why? And he says, my son is sick at school. What was my first response in 1994?
Where's your wife?
It's like, yeah, so your son's sick, so where's his mom? Why are you going? I mean,
Right.
I know I'm dating myself here in terms of my traditional mindset.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I don't have a wife. It's, we either, I don't remember now, I don't think they ever married. But he's like, I'm a single dad. It's the first time in my life I ever heard the term, single dad. So 1994, 21 years ago, 21 years ago. And it's like, oh, really? I mean, it's like shocked.
Right.
So, later, I guess he told me, kind of what the circumstances were. I don't remember much of it now, but it was like I had to get educated. Oh, because of that new knowledge, I had empathy. Oh, so I get it. So you don't have like mom and dad in the neighborhood or you're close by, you don't have a spouse to support you with him, so you're going to have to do this. So, okay, that was a reasonable request, but my first instinct was, what's wrong?
Right.
This ain't right. Surely you could work and you have other, because that's the traditional family deal is the wife tends to be the nurturer and do those kind of things, right? And the husband doesn't, or not so much. So by engaging, we learn and grow. And I'm more open to some of these non-traditional kind of things that are even more common today than they were 21 years ago.
New traditional.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, people are who they are, right?
I don't know how this falls on the spectrum of sort of what we're talking about, but in my career, probably a couple of the most significant things that occurred in regarding to work and staying at a place, things were not progressing as I thought. And then when I, chose to make a change or to do something different or do something about it on my own, then the manager said, oh, okay, well, we'll match that raise that you're going to get for leaving, or we'll get rid of that person now that nobody ever liked, that, you're saying you're gone. And I'm like, no, it's too late. So I never turned back. I don't know if that was good, bad, or indifferent, but sometimes you wait so late to do something there's no mending.
Well, the good story, good part of that story is I'm listening is that one, I remember you telling me that story about happened, that one person that was just so difficult, you left because of that person.
Yeah.
So as leaders, owners, you know, if there's difficult people and we're not addressing it, so that person that upsets you, I would ask who else are they upsetting, right? So who else feels the same way?
I wasn't even
Yeah.
making that
And
correlation.
if you're not addressing that, you know, and you're not doing exit interviews, who else is like, doesn't want to work
Yeah.
with him or her, and is frustrated by their behavior or attitude, you know? So, you know, choices are choices. We live and die by our choices, and you make the choice to leave and not stay. But, you know, it's not a good or bad kind of thing. But I do think it's interesting to say, hey, you know, there's 100 stories like that, where, especially a boss, where people are reporting up to a boss that has a number of direct reports. You know, the bottom line is, we have to own their behavior and make sure they're representative of who we are, who we want to be to our employees. And if they're not, no matter how smart they are, no matter how many certifications they have, we got to get rid of them and get somebody in there who's more representative of our values.
So a more horrific thing that could happen is maybe this person is causing consternation for everybody else, and, you know, what if your good person leaves, and now all you got left is,
Well,
but you know.
Because
that's what I did, that's exactly what I did.
but Rob, you're exactly right. If you were to put a list, say if you had 100 employees, and you were to list them in terms of performance capabilities and their contribution to the company, if you've got some difficult people in there that are really in important positions, who leaves first? The people at the top leave first because they have options. They can take their resume out in the open market and they've got choices. That bottom half, they don't have choices. They're risk averse. So they're going to stay head down until the doors close, right? And so if you don't act, everybody starts leaking out the top, and before you know it, you're like, where'd all my good people go? And you're left with the dregs, if you would. You're left with the bottom. And that's a very, you know, passive owners, disengaged owners, you know, owners that aren't really engaged, they can kind of go away and come back and go, ooh, wow, things changed quickly, right? So it's the appropriate level of engagement is really, really important. Let's talk about 3 more things. A culture void of affirmation. So how much does it cost to say please, right? Thank you, or nice job? And yet, I've had countless people say, I can't remember the last time my boss said, thank you, let alone good job. And then, so here's the common retort. So you talk to a client and you say, okay, you're struggling with affirmation, I get it. And I'm thinking about one guy in particular. And he's, you know, said, so why do you think that's a struggle? He said, my parents never thanked me, never praised me. My boss, you know, I've been an owner. You know, many people have been an owner almost their whole life. You know, nobody thanks me. Well, you're the owner. You know, it's like there's nobody above you to say good job. So part of our affirmation needs to come from within, right? You know, hopefully we have a spouse or friends that, you know, kind of provide some affirmation in our life. But when it relates to work, it's more about ourselves being able to self-affirm. But our employees need more, right? And again, this is anecdotal. I don't have any research to support this, but I've come to the conclusion that many times the way we praise or don't praise has a lot to do with how we were parented as a child. If we were raised by highly critical parents that never or rarely praise, we tend to have that aspect of our leadership model in terms of the praise and the criticism. And you can imagine you've got a great performer who's really internally motivated. They're really giving the extra mile. They know it. And so let's look at it this way, where they're coming in as a new employee, and they're going to come in, they're going to blow your socks off, they're going to impress you as sales or leadership. So they're working longer hours. They're giving extra, and they never get any feedback. No one ever says, I noticed. No one ever says, I'm seeing you work hard. Thank you. I appreciate it. No one notices. At some point in time, they're going to look around, and they're going to see that, you know, people are beaten down and not working at that level, and they're going to ask themselves, what's the point? Right? Because, you know, it's not just about the money. Yes, sometimes there's a financial reward for working harder, but if you're not commissioned, if you're just salary, and you're working hard, they say either for reward, recognition, or time off. And with a lot of folks, it's recognition, and you're never getting any recognition. They just fall in line with the masses. They just eventually just say, what's the point? Why should I bust my butt, work harder than everybody else if no one notices and no one cares? So we need to be mindful. Blanchard says, catch people doing something right? And sometimes it's just, hey, I saw you do that. I heard you on the phone with that client. Really nice job. The way you were paid, I could tell you were struggling, being frustrated. They may have been difficult. Yeah, they were kind of difficult. But you really hung in there. Thank you. I appreciate the way you treated that person. Those things go a long way. When I have leaders in the room and I do the coaching skills for leaders thing, it's powerful, the ability we have to put a smile on people's face. What if you had a good employee and you brought him in your office and you said, listen, I want to talk to you about something. Immediately they'd probably go, ooh, what did I do, right? But you just said, listen, I haven't said this in a long time, but I just want you to know. You work hard, you're here on time, you more than exceeded my expectations. I just wanted you to know I noticed it, I appreciate it, thank you very much. Now, what are they going to do as soon as they leave that office, most likely?
Tell somebody. Tell them why.
If they have their spouse or, they're younger and have a parent, you're not going to believe what happened. Now think about it. In their mind, that is special and rare. That somebody took the time to just say, I need you to know what I see and I appreciate it. They're going to call it, you're not going to believe what happened. And they're going to feel awesome. And so many times we have that ability to make people feel awesome, and they don't feel awesome because we don't choose to do that. Now, you may be saying, well, I don't feel that way, so you need to have people in your office that you feel that way about, and be diligent until you get people that you feel awesome about. That's part of the challenge of recruiting, is to build those kind of folks so that you have people that you're like, man, this is just awesome, right? So this culture void of affirmation, it costs nothing to be appreciative, to be thankful. And people will sometimes say, well, Michael, when do you terminate? Talking about coaching and talking about people's performance. So at what point in time do you terminate? I would answer it this way: when you have nothing to thank them for. It's like, I'm looking for something to say thank you. I'm watching their behavior. I'm watching, and paying attention to the reports and it's like there's just nothing.
But, and they make a big deal about, you can never fire a state government employee. Well, there is...
a room where they're all sent to...
No, but just like any business, your periodic, evaluations, thank you. And if you sit down properly and say, here's the things you're doing good, these things need to be corrected. We'll talk about them again in 3 months, quarterly, evaluations. You get to that, you're still poor, you haven't done it. When you document that and you're at the end of that, again, you have nothing, they're not performing, they're not getting there.
That's a job
You
critical aspect.
can fire a state government employee just like that.
But managers don't want to go to that length. They don't want to...
Because everybody pulls out, 5 years of evaluations and says, look at this, perfect.
Because every person at that point didn't want to deal with any of the truth.
I had no idea that, your defense can be, I had no idea I wasn't performing. The reality is probably different, and you got nothing to do with it.
Absolutely. So number 7, poor communication. So people, the number one thing, if you were to evaluate and say, you got 100 employees, you say, what's the most important thing that employees want? They want to be included and involved in communication or information. They want to know about things that impact them. If we're going to make a decision, they don't want to hear it after the fact. They want to be notified if it's just being notified, or if ideally they would like to have some input into that decision if you're open to that. And I think sometimes we ask, but we have no intention of listening and taking it in, but we feel like we got to go through the ritual of just asking. And I think that's unfortunate. We really need to be open to the fact that some of our employees might have some really good ideas, right? And so get them involved. Do not sit in your ivory tower and make decisions that affect all these folks without saying, hey, you know, there's something we need to do about this. There's some cost issues we've got to address, you know, and so I'm open to your input on how to cut 5%, 10% out of the budget. And you may have an idea, so you might meet with them and say, you know, bring your ideas, I'm going to bring my ideas, and let's share and come up with some conclusions that we can mutually support that would agree, that would meet 5% or 10%, whatever the case may be, reductions. You frustrate really good people when policy decisions are made, strategic decisions are made, and they're totally left out of the loop. People want to be engaged, they want to be involved, they want to have input, and they feel very respected when you have input. I remember, it's kind of a silly thing now, but I was in middle school, like 12 years, 13 years old before we took our first family vacation that wasn't going to visit grandma, right? And we did these power trips in Florida where for the first 2 or 3 years, my dad had this thing that we had to see every sightseeing attraction, right? Everything that you ever heard about, SeaWorld and, you know, Weeki Wachee or, you know, all this kind of stuff. And so Dad would say, here's all these things, which are you, he'd ask my sister and I, which of these are of interest to you? And I thought that was kind of cool. You know, I'm 12 or 13, my sister's 10. And so we would say, well, how about this or this one? And so he would listen and take into consideration a couple that we wanted to do and stuff that he and Mom wanted to do. And so that was kind of the culture I was raised in, this sense of our opinion was taken into consideration. He tried to meet our needs. I'm not saying he ever did it always, but I felt like he wanted to, right? And sometimes as a leader, I wanted to, but I can't, right? I really have a heart to try to do it your way, but the cost won't work. And explain why. This is why I can't do that, right? It's too complicated, there's too many consequences that are not acceptable. And most reasonable people say, I get it, thanks for explaining, right? But too many times it's like, well, why'd you make such a big decision? Cut pay, reduce benefits, get rid of this perk without consulting them? And the answer is, because I can. You know, it's like, I'm the leader. I own the company. I can. If the answer is because I can, you're not thinking right. You're just not thinking right. So the final one here is a lack of fairness. Probably one of the things that I abhor more than any other thing within organizational dynamics is politics. Politics implies, when you say that there's a lot of politics over there, what that means is you get ahead by some reason other than performance. It's either politics or performance. Politics means I can warm up to a person, I can play golf with a person, I can have a personal relationship with someone and advance my career that is set aside or different than my performance. Think about this. If everyone got promoted and it was clear, yep, that's the best performer. Yep, that's the person, not just seniority, right, from a union environment, but they are the best, no matter what their age is, how long they've been there. If everybody on that team said, yep, that's the right person, that's the person who needed that raise or deserved that raise, that's the most qualified person for that job. If everybody saw that, they would work hard and be affirmed that if you had those qualifications, you would be treated the same way, regardless of race or gender or whatever. The best person gets the job, right? But if it's who is related to the owner, who sucks up to the owner, who went to the same fraternity as the owner, who plays golf with the owner, all of that discourages all the other folks, because some folks are just not even interested in that, right? And the people that are, in my opinion, are generally lesser performers. So they're playing to their strength. In other words, I'm not as good a performer, but I'm a much better kiss-up, right? I've got these relationship, political skills that I can maximize. So I'm not trying to diminish relationship building skills in general. We should have good relationships with everyone. But if that's how you're getting ahead without the context of performance, it's just wrong. And it sends a very bad message. So when we look at this, these are the reasons why people leave. Poor managers, pay that's not competitive, no learning or growth opportunities, a lack of connection to values or vision, not giving them feedback, there's no affirmation, no thank yous, no please, there's no communication on stuff that matters to them, and there's a lack of fairness. You know, as an owner, you know, we have to be careful to bring a son in, right, and then immediately, you know, give them a title. You know, titles need to be earned. Responsibility needs to be earned. And I say son, daughter, a child, right? And you see a lot of companies where the kid is making 6 figures, because everybody knows, because people in payroll told everybody that the kid's making 6 figures. He's driving, and maybe they don't know how much he makes, but he's driving a Porsche, and he's 24, right? And they're saying, I've been here 30 years, right? And this kid comes in, and if he's good, that's one thing. But if he's just the owner's son, it's like, in the book Good to Great, they talk about the Mars family. That's a multi-generational family-owned business. And I can't, this is 10, 15-year-old information, but in that day, it's so cool the way to describe it, because there's 2 brothers that were running the company back when Good to Great was written. And there's a huge, like a bullpen, we would call it, cubicle farm and all that, and the 2 owners have a cube, just like everybody else. Just like everybody else. Their attitude is approachable. You can hear and listen, pay attention to what's going on. You're engaged, you're involved. You're not. They drive Chevys, right? They don't have special parking places. That's who they are. And you know, there's something about that that's kind of attractive, to feel like they're more like you than different. And what's a Mars brother worth? I mean, how many bazillions of dollars, right? So you know, it's not just, well, I don't make as much money, therefore I don't have to act fancy. It's just, no, that's who I am. I'm approachable. I want to be approachable to the folks that are mattering to me. Down at the bottom, let's touch on these quickly. Tell the truth, keep your word, pay what you promised. When you talk pay, put it in writing. Holds you accountable and them accountable. When you hire a person, put it in writing, what you're going to pay, how you're going to pay, what their benefits are going to cost. Avoid misunderstandings by putting things in writing. And if you have to break your word because of something that you didn't anticipate, go to them and apologize profusely and explain to them why you can't keep your word, and don't blame them if they move on. Your word has to matter. And put it in writing will keep you accountable. Apologize. When you act like an ass, apologize. Right away. Same day, go to them, be sincere, do it quickly. You are not above, you know, human kindness or politeness. And the final thing here is, do not have an air of self-importance. This is a big one. You know, this sense that why did you do that, Michael? Why did you talk to that person that way? I guess because of him. That's just not a good reason for bad behavior. So, you know, none of these things cost anything, right? And a good way to keep yourself in check is to personally have a phone interview. And I'll tell you, Tom, as an owner, what you can do is make it a part of your policy that an exit interview is required to get your last paycheck. Right? So once we do an exit interview, I'll hand you your paycheck. But until we do that, it's not going to happen. And so now you get a chance, and you have your, you know, you Google a good exit interview questions. You say, so, you know, what frustrated you about working for my company or for me? Is there anything I can do? You know, I promise you, there's no repercussions. You know, I'm here to learn. And if you've built that kind of trust and loyalty with them up to that point, they're going to be honest and transparent. And you want that. Even if it hurts, you want to hear that, because you can adjust then so that you don't lose this, people in the future for those same reasons. Hey, thank you very much, here's your last paycheck, it's all good, you know, I want to make sure you know you're not going to get any bad recommendations from me, you know, because of this conversation, right? So I hope this is helpful in trying to retain top talent. Ultimately, if I was to sum it up, it's being a person of high character, being a very high character leader, having high character people working for you, and just doing right by people, being professional, saying and doing, you know, what you said you would do, and being consistent in that regard. And if you'll do that, you folks, I think, are much more likely to stay. You're going to lose some, but you'll keep much, much more. All right? That's a wrap.
Good job, man.